The Josh Allen conversation, is he the MVP right now? Do you think the criticisms on Josh Allen that he is being pushed by the media are fair? Do you think it's valid? Dallas, I'll start with you.
I think it's a two-man race. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. This is probably the closest race we've had in a while. I think a couple of years ago when it was Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, that went really down to the wire. Then the last couple of games, Hurts ended up not playing. He was a bit banged up, and they already secured the bye. But that one was about as close as it's been. And I feel like last season, Lamar Jackson was the MVP, but he didn't have this overwhelming season that made voters or made the media, anyone who was talking about it, be like, Lamar's the clear and obvious, right? I think there's a few guys in the mix. Right now, it's a two-man race. Credit to Joe Burrow. What he's been doing has been sensational. He has been the only reason the Bengals have been competent this season. If you put even an above-average starter into that situation, this Bengals team might have 2 wins on the season. He's been sensational. But Josh Allen, Lamar, they've just winning too many games right now that put them ahead. To decide between these two quarterbacks, it's really difficult. Because statistically, you could look at both of them, and you could look at Lamar Jackson, the best touchdown interception ratio in the league, the best passer rating in the league. But you look at Josh Allen, he's number 1 EPA, number 1 success rate. So no matter which way you slice it, their numbers are damn about even. It's about as close as you're going to get. I think Lamar has a bit more total yards. I think he has like maybe 1 more touchdown and a couple more less interceptions. But for the most part, these guys are putting up statistically insane numbers. I mean, these are 2 of the best individual seasons we're seeing from a quarterback in a long time. For all of the shit we gave earlier in the season, the last couple of years, how offenses have not been as prolific as we've seen the last 5 to 10 years, they're kind of cutting that narrative down, because statistically, these guys are putting up some of the best seasons we have seen in our lifetime. And then in terms of team success, because that's typically where the second, part of this comes from, right? Individually, what are you doing? And team-wise, what are you doing? Well, on one hand, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, they smoked the Bills. They went out there and they dominated them. That was probably the worst Bills loss all season long. And on the other hand, these last 2 weeks, Josh Allen went out there and he beat the Detroit Lions. And although he lost to the Rams, he put up 42 points. There's only so much you can do. But being the Detroit Lions, who I think for a lot of people were the number 1 team, best team in the NFL, to go on the road and do it, where all of us took the Lions outside of Riv, who's sticking with his Buffalo Bills, that's a win that is going to put you maybe just slightly ahead of Lamar Jackson. Because if the Bills and the Ravens played in week 16, when it is fresh in everyone's mind before you do the vote, and Lamar Jackson goes out there and does that, and they win by 2-3 touchdowns, I don't know if it's much of a conversation. I think Lamar Jackson wins it hands down. But the fact that it's been multiple months now, and we've seen the Ravens not be quite as dominant as they were, especially in that game against the Buffalo Bills. And now as the season progresses and Josh Allen beat the Kansas City Chiefs and he beat the Detroit Lions, now his case is starting to build up, where Lamar Jackson's case hasn't necessarily slowed down, but he just hasn't had those moments to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. That was all the way back in week 1, and they just barely lost by 1 single toe from Isaiah Likely. Has them the chance to beat the Detroit Lions. Instead, he goes out there and throws 5 touchdowns against the New York Giants. They have a dominating win, and his odds are negatively impacted because Josh Allen has a great game against the Lions. So I don't understand the animosity behind it. The whole Josh Allen's being, Joel Embiid at MVP, how the media is pushing it. I don't get it. I don't know how you can see this guy play and not think he is at worst the second best quarterback in the NFL this season. Him and Lamar have been playing at such a high level. The only thing, in my opinion, that makes it solidified that one gets it over the other is if they're the number 1 seed in the AFC. If Josh Allen, which is very possible because they already have the tiebreaker over KC, there's a chance Patrick Mahomes misses a week. If they're able to get the number 1 seed, they have the best record in the AFC, and the numbers are about as close as they are now, okay, Josh Allen, you got it. But if you're telling me the Buffalo Bills have 1 more win than the Baltimore Ravens, if it's that close, it's a toss-up. I don't think right now either player has that much of a lead, even though betting market-wise, Josh Allen's like -700, -900, something crazy. The Ravens play the Steelers next week, the week after, I believe, and then they could be right in the hunt to win the division. And you're talking about the 2 seed and the 3 seed, or the 1 seed and the 2 seed, and it's neck and neck. So I would love to see Lamar get his 3rd because I love Lamar Jackson, but Josh Allen's been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So if he gets it this year, I wouldn't be upset.
I think this discussion can go a multitude of ways. For one, Lamar this year has been far and away the most productive quarterback. What he has been able to do is, in many different ways, kind of historic, looking back to his first MVP in 2019, and now the production is better than Josh Allen. But I think what gives Josh Allen the edge in this discussion, to me, a slight nod above Lamar at this current point in time, is the degree of difficulty. Coming into this year, many different people are ready to, and this is including me, I had the Jets making the playoffs, ready to prop up the Jets, ready to put the Dolphins in that playoff discussion. And right now, when you look at the AFC East, it is not even close who is in the lead. It is the Bills at the very top, second place the Dolphins at 6-8. And then you look at Josh Allen's individual play. Yesterday, his leading receiver is Ty Johnson. And after trading Stephon Diggs, many people ask, are the Bills going to take a step back? Are they going to be the same level in offense? Well, right now, they're averaging more points a game than this Ravens team. The Ravens are first in yards per game, and I think that's a credit to the supporting cast Lamar has. One of the top 2 running backs in football, Derrick Henry, who is an Offensive Player of the Year candidate for sure. You have one of, if not the very best tight end room, from Mark Andrews to Charlie Kolar and Isaiah Likely, and the wide receiver play. And I think when you compare the situation that Lamar is in to Josh Allen, you give Josh Allen the credit because of the fact the degree of difficulty and what he's been able to maximize is a testament to what he's able to do on third down, in the red zone, and these key situations and these big moments against a team like the Lions yesterday. He showed it. You do make a good point. I think if that Ravens-Bills game was week 16 or week 17, it would have been a lot like last year when Brock Purdy was an MVP favorite, and then he got swallowed by the Ravens, and immediately Lamar became the MVP favorite. I know I used a big boy word there, but at the end of the day, I think
That's a way
Lamar
to put it.
has to be so much more productive than Josh to win the MVP because of the fact voter fatigue is a real thing. And at some point, something has to give. Josh Allen's third year in the NFL had a monstrous season, and then Aaron Rodgers had an even better campaign. So to me, I think everything's pointed at Josh getting that first MVP, whereas with Lamar, after winning it last year, where the numbers were not quite as impressive as this year, he's going to have to go above and beyond to really get that third MVP. And it's the same thing you see in other sports, Nikola Jokic. I don't really factor in voter fatigue, but the voters certainly will in this discussion. I think that does help Josh Allen's
But
case
that's the
quite a
thing.
bit.
I don't think that voters should factor in who won in previous years to determine who's going to win in the current year. I don't think Lamar Jackson is currently the MVP. I think it is Josh Allen. But I don't think that Lamar Jackson has been by far and away more productive than Josh Allen. When you look at total numbers, and I feel like that encapsulates these quarterbacks better because they both pass and rush the football a ton. Lamar Jackson has more total yards. They both have the same amount of touchdowns at 37. Total turnovers, Lamar Jackson has 7 because he's fumbled 4 times. Josh Allen has 5 total turnovers. Passer rating goes to Lamar Jackson.
He hasn't fumbled?
Josh Allen, no, he's not. He's not fumbled this year.
No fumbles.
Fumbles lost? None. Fumbles lost because those are 2 different stats.
Right. Little luck there.
Yeah, you could fumble, but you don't have no fumbles lost.
That's what I'm like, what?
Yeah,
Okay,
you can
I'm
fact
fine.
check me on ESPN, John. Maybe it's 0 or 1. It's one of those. And although Lamar Jackson has better passer rating, Josh Allen is better in QBR, which I think is a better stat than passer rating. He's better in EPA per play. The Bills score more points, and they have a better offense in terms of EPA per play. So he has similar stats. He's leading a better offense, and the Bills have 2 more wins. I do think that the Ravens, for the most part, have more signature wins under their belt. Really, the only teams that Josh Allen has beaten that's over 500 have been the Chiefs, the Lions, and outside of that, it kind of gets dim, you know, because he lost to the Texans, he lost to the Ravens. I forget, he beat the Seahawks too. I think those are the 3 wins he has over 500, where Lamar Jackson has much more. So I think he does have more signature wins, but they have come early in the season. And his last signature game was against the Steelers, and they lost, and he didn't play particularly well. So that's what allowed Josh Allen to take the lead in this MVP race. But I do think that Josh Allen is playing just as good as him, and they're winning, and he's leading a better offense. And last year, it's kind of pissing me off that people are just acting like Allen wasn't in the MVP conversation.
Agreed.
Because last year he led the league in total yards, in total touchdowns. He had those interception numbers and the total turnover numbers that were crazy. It was 22 total turnovers. But here's the thing. Last year, according to PFF, Josh Allen had a turnover-worthy play percentage of 3%. This year, it's 2.7%, which means that last year, he was pretty safe with the ball. He just got some unlucky breaks, and this year, he's getting some luckier breaks. But context is never taken into these type of discussions. But I do think that Josh Allen winning MVP would kind of balance things out a little bit because he does deserve one. And I think when we are in an era with all these great quarterbacks, with Mahomes, with Lamar, with Josh Allen, with even Joe Burrow, it would be nice for one of them to win MVP each. And Joe Burrow seems like the odd man out right now.
Listen, you could say voters shouldn't think of who won in the past, but in the same breath, you can't be like, Well, it would be nice if
You
Josh
get
Allen
an
got one.
MVP.
You know,
You get an
It's
MVP.
gotta be very black and white.
But Allen's is deserved if he
No,
wins this
absolutely.
year.
I'm not saying it's not
Yeah.
deserved.
So John, did you check that?
Yeah, Allen, this is per StatMoose. I don't know if this is 100% accurate. Allen has 2 and Lamar has 5.
Fumbles lost or is fumbles?
Fumbles lost. And then Football Reference will give an entirely different thing because they can include fumble recoveries for a teammate if he didn't fumble. And that can make up, let's say Allen has 5 fumbles and he lost all 5, but he recovered 3 of his teammates. It'll give you the impression
Oh,
that
that's
it's
so
2
stupid.
fumbles lost.
That is
I think
dumb.
So
I'm like 90% sure. I mean,
Okay,
it
let
could
me
be-
look at
could be off.
ESPN. So ESPN right now, they credit it's 0 fumbles lost. He has 1. Josh Allen has 1 fumble on the season, 0 lost.
And you take into
I'm seeing
account.
Josh Allen with 5 fumbles
on ESPN.
on Pro Football Reference.
Okay, I'm on ESPN. I'm using that. I don't know what's a better source.
It
You
would
know,
be
these
nice
stats
if
a
there
little
was
bit
just like
different.
clear, concise stat about that.
That's literally every website now. They have like different numbers.
Regardless of how you shake it, Joel, I understand your sentiment. And I think everybody here is making great points. I texted you guys yesterday. There's 2 guys that need to be in the conversation, but that's it. I'm not hearing anybody else. It's Josh Allen. It's Lamar Jackson. Now, if you go by the raw stats, of course, Lamar Jackson, to me, has had the better raw numbers. That's just obvious. But then I'm watching Lamar Jackson, and to me, this is the best Lamar Jackson I've ever seen.
Agreed.
And last year I felt the same way about it. I'm like, wow, he's actually taken such a huge step as a passer. And then this year he's found a way to be even better than that. Of course, it helps when you have one of the best running backs in the history of this game in Derrick Henry. But over these last few weeks, Derrick Henry has not been that same dominant player that we saw early in the season. And now we've seen Lamar Jackson be the main guy, the focal point. And of course it is the Giants. We're not taking it too serious, but against the Giants, that was a flawless performance. His arm is incredible, and the strides that he's taken as a passer really impressed me because, you know me, I've been vocal about it. I didn't think Lamar Jackson could ever reach this height of being this elite of a passer. And then this year, you look at what he's been able to do, and I understand we acknowledge Zay Flowers. We understand that he's a really great talent. And I've been vocal about Rashad Bateman, but it looked like Rashad Bateman was in the dumps. It looked like Rashad Bateman's career was about to be where we had any idea of him being a solid player in this league. That was starting to die. But then this season, Lamar Jackson and him really have found a great connection, and he's starting to get it going. And this is where Mark Andrews had his ups, has his down. Isaiah Likely, you don't know which week is going to be his week. The offensive line playing a lot better than where it started, of course, but you compare that to what Josh Allen has. Josh Allen has one of the best lines. But I agree with you. Situation-wise, when it comes to skill positions, I love James Cook. I think that he's an amazing player.
He wasn't healthy for a month with his foot.
And you look at it, James Cook, he's not even seeing 50% of snaps. They just go through that cycle of James Cook. You have Ty Johnson and Ray Davis, who really is a really good running back. I think Ray Davis could be a starter in a couple of teams as well. But when it comes to the MVP conversation, I look at last season, and I thought Josh Allen would have gotten a little bit more attention for the MVP just for how great he was, what he was able to do, ultimately win his division as well. But you look at the year before that, Lamar Jackson gets injured, if I'm not mistaken, and the Ravens are not the division winner. If I'm wrong, you let me know. But I'm pretty sure.
What are you thinking of 2021?
We're correct.
Where they went 8-9?
Or
Yeah, they lost.
2020.
No,
22.
2022. He was injured. Correct.
Yeah, they made the playoffs, but they lost.
Thank you very much.
Tyler
and they
Huntley.
lost to round 1
He got
to
hurt
the
in
Bengals.
2021 as well.
That's when Tyler Huntley almost pulled off a great comeback,
Yeah,
and
the
then
sneak 99
they had
yards, yeah.
exactly. So I'm glad my mind's in the right spot. So Lamar Jackson gets injured. They were 8-3 at the time that he got hurt, and then they ended up falling off, of course, because Lamar Jackson got injured. He comes back. They win the division. They're also the number 1 seed, and he obviously played his best brand of football at the quarterback position. To me, it was MVP worthy. I thought Josh Allen could have gotten a little bit more love for it, but understood why he wanted, especially taking narrative into account. If you want to go by voter fatigue, and because Lamar Jackson hasn't been the same level of player in the playoffs, we see it in the NBA a lot. I'm not a huge advocate of that because this is a regular season award. And this regular season, I've seen Lamar Jackson be the best quarterback in my opinion. So I would favor Lamar Jackson. But if Josh Allen wins the MVP, if you're upset at that, it's ridiculous. If you're one of those guys that think, oh, Josh Allen, he's clear-cut the MVP, I think you're mistaken because Lamar Jackson has been just as good, or in my opinion, a little bit better.
On PFF, Lamar Jackson this year is their number 1 graded quarterback in the league. So I think that they do a better job at contextualizing stuff than just the raw numbers. And you look at the film and it shows. He's been the best quarterback in the league this year. For
Better
sure.
completion percentage. Also, when it comes to rush attempts, Lamar Jackson's likely to fumble because he has so many attempts. But considering the fact of, regardless, 5-0, Josh Allen is one of the best rushing quarterbacks I've ever seen in my life. And I know it's 30 or around 30 more attempts that Lamar Jackson does have. And Lamar, of course, is the more efficient runner.
Yeah.
He is the best runner we've ever seen at the quarterback position. But what Josh is able to do is Big Ben at a whole other level.
Yeah, I
If
agree.
Big Ben were athletic like Josh Allen, that's who
Big
he'd
Ben
be.
was athletic, and then he had the motorcycle accident. I think that started to torpedo his.
Not like Josh,
but not Josh.
Was it
No,
Josh?
to that
but he
extent.
would,
level
no, he
athletic?
really
He was a good
He was a
athlete.
really good, like
He
a
was,
pretty good
yeah.
athlete.
He was a good,
by
but
stretches.
Josh
Josh is
is
different for sure.
legitimately
like maybe like slightly better than Burrow
At
type, or
athlete-
Dak. I think.
Yeah,
Dak,
I think
too.
that's
when we
fair.
look at the
But-
quarterback position, athlete-wise, I think Lamar Jackson is the peak of quarterbacks athletically. That is
Physically,
unbelievable.
Josh
And then
Allen
Josh
is the
Allen
same
might be
exact
number
thing.
2, truthfully.
I do want to say something that's kind of a paradox because
Love good
it is a
paradox.
regular season award, yes, but I think we see this in other sports as well, where the postseason does matter because it confirms whether or not that player was worthy at times.
Respect.
And if you are a player who has an amazing regular season and then you kind of drop off in the playoffs or you struggle, which we saw last year versus the Chiefs, we've seen that moments with Lamar Jackson. Naturally, every time we have an MVP, we're going to look back with hindsight bias. And the playoffs confirm whether or not that player was worthy. And Josh Allen, for years on end, has elevated his play in the playoffs and done the absolute most to support his team. But routinely, Sean McDermott's poor clock management, which we saw 2 weeks ago, as well as his defense really struggling, has been what's held back the Bills. On the Ravens front, this year their defense has fallen off, but it's been Lamar in the passing game, which has failed them versus the Chiefs when Steve Spagnuolo stacks the box and says, beat us to the air, and they fail to. So when we look at the playoffs, yeah, it's a regular season award, but I think at some point you do have to acknowledge Lamar has not established himself in the playoffs. Josh Allen has.
And that's
I
the
think
thing.
that's part of why he's also deserving.
Like last year, the Ravens and Lamar Jackson, he won it because he was great, but also because of the team record. It was the reason why Brock Purdy was in a discussion with CMC. CMC was really the only MVP candidate on that team.
He was moving me.
But because they were winning, Brock Purdy was the favorite.
Brandon
And
Ayuk, too.
it took a disaster class from Purdy
real
to
disaster.
really take himself out of the race completely. But that's an issue I have because Josh Allen didn't get the MVP recognition last year because the Bills were always at an uphill battle. They were climbing.
climbing up.
They lose to the Broncos on Monday Night Football. People are thinking they're going to miss the playoffs.
Lost the Giants,
so when
too?
they barely make the playoffs,
They almost lost to the Giants. Almost
Yeah.
Lost
lost.
to another shitty
they
team.
they
Andrew Hill.
barely win the division.
Yep.
You're not giving Josh Allen the same respect as if he went maybe 12-5. Because last year, according to PFF, Josh Allen was the number one graded quarterback in their system. This year, it's been Lamar Jackson. So I think they have done a pretty accurate job at depicting, who's top of the top. Josh Allen this year is number 4. So, his rushing is really taking him up a notch because he's had some stinkers like the game against the Texans. But I do think Lamar's had more signature wins, just wins against 500 teams. The Ravens have won against the Bills. Not the Bengals twice. I just put them as a signature win because it's a division rivalry.
That was a
Of
gr-
course.
they
I
were
could take
great
them out.
games.
Yeah, they
They were
were.
great games.
Bills, Commanders, Buccaneers, Broncos, Chargers. For Allen, the teams that he's beaten over 500 have been the Cardinals, the Seahawks, the Chiefs, the Niners, and the Lions. So it's about similar. I think, Lamar, maybe defenses, degree of difficulty, Broncos, Chargers defense are pretty good.
And no, they ran through us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say, it's pretty even, but I do think the MVP should go to Josh Allen just to restore some balance in the awards a little bit.
Lamar still has a chance
Why
because
is that your stance?
Because I want people to win. I want
why?
people to win.
He wants everyone to eat.
Guy's
I
lying.
actually respect that
We know
quite a
why.
bit.
Lamar Jackson has already won 2
know
MVPs.
why.
Oh, I see you're picking up.
You know
I'm
what?
picking up with one
But
now.
Lamar
Why?
Jackson, these next 2 weeks, they have Pittsburgh Saturday game,
Oh, that's
so
an L.
primetime game. That's a
You know-
huge
you know
game.
that's an L.
And then they have the Texans on Christmas. So
Now
if he
it's
goes
on
out
KJ
there
too.
and he dominates the next 2 weeks, I think they have Cleveland week 18. So who knows standings wise if he'll end up playing. But those 2 games are going to be very important because these next 3 games for the Bills, they have New England twice and the Jets. So Josh Allen doesn't really have, outside of like a 6 touchdown game, which he could very easily do against any of these next 2 opponents. He could very easily do. But Lamar Jackson these next 2 weeks has the opportunity, maybe not as much as the Texans because we understand they're not as, great of a team as the Detroit Lions or the Chiefs that Josh Allen has beaten recently. But being on Christmas, being on prime time, you get a signature win there. It doesn't really matter who the team is, as long as it's not a god-awful team. That's going to move people. But most importantly, Saturday, against the Pittsburgh Steelers. If he goes out there and he does the same thing he did a month ago, 3 weeks ago, I think he's cooked.
Agreed.
But if he goes out there and he, kind of defeats these demons
Has a
that he's
Jalen
had,
Hurts-esque type game.
has a Jalen Hurts-esque game,
Talk.
MVP-like
Please,
game,
talk.
it could be a whole new conversation.